episode 10 of the Halftime Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Reese Kinner. Today, I'm joined by special guest Zach Blackerby from the Locked on Auburn podcast. Zach, welcome on to the show. Appreciate you for coming on today and, kind of give the audience a brief rundown of what your show is about.
Yeah, sure. Locked on Auburn is it's a daily Auburn podcast where we talk about everything Auburn Tigers every single day, usually twice every single day. Thanks for reaching out and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I mean it's great to see you on here. I know you have a lot of time, or you don't have a lot of time on your hands, obviously, with all the episodes you put out during the week, and you go to a lot of sporting events. So definitely a very busy man in Zach Blackerby. But Zach, obviously you cover a lot of Auburn sports. Gonna kind of get going here though with some Auburn basketball. I saw you recently covered with the Alabama game this past weekend. I kind of want to talk about that. Auburn 94-85, a great game in Tuscaloosa, very physical game too. Auburn got out to a big lead, but then kind of let it slip a little bit. Some people say it's the refs. Some people say some of Auburn's mistakes that happened. But Zach, what were your thoughts on that Bama game on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't going to be easy when Auburn jumped out to a big lead like that. Alabama has several runs in them, and they certainly had three, I think, really big runs that, brought them back in three different situations. And that one at the end kind of made things feel a little tight. And then Tahad Pettiford said, no, I will take care of this by myself if I need to. But I mean, I think it's everything that was advertised. I think when you look at the final,
it was great.
Yeah. Like when you look at the final score, 9 points, to me, it felt closer than 9 points until the final few minutes of the game. But I mean, the second half, I mean, it really just felt like it was two heavyweights swinging back and forth, beating the crap out of each other. And to me, I thought we saw the best two teams in college basketball take on each other on Saturday. And I think the exciting thing is we get to see it again in a few weeks. And I bet we see it one more time this postseason as well.
Oh yeah, certainly. I think obviously you're probably going to see it coming up, possibly obviously this last game of the season, March 8th, and then you'll see it again on possibly in the SEC tournament, maybe even in March Madness if these two teams get that far. And obviously, like you said, Todd just took the game into his own hands there at the end of the game, pulled up from deep three in that when it was 65-65 in the second half. And then obviously, Chad kind of got going, but did foul out of the game. Kind of a weak call, I'd like to say. A lot of people kind of frustrated with Chad lately with some of the decisions he's made. I'm not really that frustrated because I feel like he's a very, very good player, but does have some anger issues. But I feel like Chad, had these past few games hasn't really lost his temper like I would expect him, because Oklahoma came into Neville and tried to rattle him a little bit, and then you saw Alabama tried to rattle him, but it just didn't really work. And it's a really great game overall, like you said, from Auburn and the Crimson Tide. I mean, like we said, 94-85 in Tuscaloosa, and they will meet again. And what are your expectations for that next matchup in Neville?
Yeah. Just real quick, something you said about Chad. I think Chad has been unfairly painted as this dirty player, as this hothead. Is he emotional? Sure, absolutely. Yeah. But a lot of these guys are. And I think that's kind of what makes the highs of this team so electric and explosive and dynamic. And I think Bruce Pearl has kind of attracted that type player. And I think he's kind of built that type culture where, hey, you can have that style of play here at Auburn as long as you operate within the confines of the system and of the team. And all of these guys have a huge personality. And Bruce Pearl wants them all to show that. Everyone who covers an Auburn game from a national perspective, whether it's the commentators or whether it's, the national talking heads, they are so quick to point out, well, Chad Baker-Mazara, anytime he does anything physical, they're like, well, he got kicked out of the Yale game. It's like, okay, all right. But you mentioned the Oklahoma thing, and it's like, sure, should he have reacted that way? That's fine. But like Damian Fishback, who is, one of the commentators for that game, was like, okay, like they're letting things slide, that you can't let this thing escalate. It's like, how is Chad supposed to respond to all of these things? And then there's all these clips of, Bama fans like putting their hands on them and all of that stuff too. And it's just like, let's pump the brakes a little bit with, like Chad's an emotional player. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if all of how he's been fully painted is entirely accurate. As far as the season finale that's coming up when Alabama heads to Auburn, I think it's so interesting, Reese, because on one hand, it could be the SEC regular season championship, or it doesn't mean anything, which I
Yeah,
think is hilarious. So those are the two most realistic options.
I could see it being the SEC regular season championship for sure because Alabama's got a tough schedule. They got Missouri tomorrow, and I believe they have Florida and Tennessee before they come to Neville. So
Yeah.
that could be a tough few games for Bama. But I mean, this Bama team doesn't back down from the fight. Only thing I was kind of interested in was how Nate Oates threw his players under the bus, and that's what I'm really interested in tomorrow is how they react to what he said in that press conference after the game about Mark Sears this, Mark Sears that, and some other players mentioned as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, that last game, like you said, it could mean nothing, could mean something. Who knows? But definitely going to be an eye catcher for sure with Auburn basketball because those last three games, Kentucky at Rupp Arena, and then the Tigers travel to College Station. That's going to be another good game. And then you got Alabama again, which will be a great showdown for the last game of the regular season in Neville Arena for the Auburn Tigers. So should be a great last three games to watch if you're an Auburn fan.
Yeah, and the three prior to that, the three that are in between, now and that final 3 game stretch, I think are all pretty manageable. I think
Yeah.
the Arkansas game tomorrow night's a little tricky. But I do think Auburn's expected to win. They're 16.5 point favorites according to FanDuel right now. And I think that's a lot. I don't know if I would take them to cover it, but I'm certainly taking them to win it. No question. Um, and then what Ole Miss and Georgia are the other two all at
Mm-hmm.
home. And, you beat those two teams on the road. You got to think you feel good about your chances taking them on at home. So take care of those 3 games. And I have a hard time with what you see with Alabama's remaining schedule and Texas A&M's remaining schedule. I think Auburn's in a prime spot to, at least get a share of the SEC regular season championship. But I think they go 5-1 over these last 6 games, and I think they seal it before they even play Alabama at the end of the season.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I think you're right. These next three games, obviously, Georgia played them in Athens. I actually went to that game. That was a pretty tough environment that the Tigers faced there
Sure.
without Broom, and obviously that tip in that the Georgia fans still say if that tip in would have went in, they would have won, and yes, it would have, but it did not go their way. And
Yikes.
I do think Arkansas is a solid team. They have some decent quad one wins, but you're coming into a tough environment with a lot of the rowdy students down there in the jungle, and I just don't think Calipari's team's going to be able to get the job done in Neville. His history in Neville really hasn't been that good since Bruce Pearl's been the coach at Auburn. So, when he was at Kentucky, not very good. Only I think 1 or 2 wins in Neville, so not very good for Calipari. And obviously that Ole Miss game, we faced Ole Miss before, we've seen them, and we've played really good against them. So I could see the Tigers winning those 3 games. The only one that really worries me is maybe Kentucky at Kentucky or maybe A&M at A&M. It just really depends.
Yeah, I think A&M is probably the toughest one from a matchup standpoint and just history. I know that sounds silly to say because Auburn hasn't won a Rupp in a hot minute, but
Yeah.
I just think with the ties of Buzz versus Bruce, I mean, it always seems like A&M gives us trouble. And I mean, I've said this on a bunch of shows this week. It's like when you talk about the SEC frontrunners, it usually goes Auburn and Alabama and Florida, and then hey, Tennessee's good, and
Hmm.
then they like skip A&M and then focus on like teams that could be dark horses, like oh, Kentucky's about to figure it out, or maybe Ole Miss or Mississippi State's tricky. It's like they skip over
Yeah.
the Aggies and they forget that this is a top 10 team in all of college basketball.
I
And
mean,
I think Auburn fans overlook them because they're all saying like, all right, if we can just beat Kentucky, then we're there. And it's like, I think it's more than that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, A&M right now, what I believe number 8 or 7. They're number 7 in the country actually. And yeah, not a team to overlook. And obviously, they've made some runs in the NCAA tournament the past few years, and they've been highly ranked. Even made a run in the SEC tournament, I believe, a few years ago. So Auburn definitely not going to overlook that opponent for sure. I know Bruce Pearl's philosophy; he's
Sure.
not going to overlook that opponent. So going to be very interesting those last 3 games, like we've mentioned.
Yep. Yep. No question. Yeah. And you mentioned Arkansas, since they've beaten Kentucky, I think they've put together a decent resume, winning in Lexington, then
Yeah,
going to Texas and winning, losing to Bama by just 4. They blow out a bad LSU team, and then they kept it close with A&M. They ended up losing by 8, but that's about how we would expect all of those things
yeah.
to go. Is the Kentucky thing such an outlier where it's like, everybody wants to mention that, but like that's not who they are. It's
Mm-mm.
just, that was special to Cal. I think there was pressure on Pope, and Kentucky didn't execute when they needed to, and they lost that game by 10 against Cal. I just don't think that's the same thing, going to Lexington in that situation versus going to Auburn on a Wednesday. I mean, that was a national storyline, and Cal knew what was at stake, and that meant more to him probably than it did Kentucky. So I don't know if that's an argument for Arkansas at this point because it's such an outlier. It's
Yeah.
such like it's so out of the ordinary. But we'll see. We'll see. I,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
expect
what is
Auburn to
it?
win big tomorrow.
I mean, what does it mean for Arkansas? Because obviously, I think they have 10 losses on the season, and obviously, this SEC's been a tough conference this year. The only really bad teams have been South Carolina. That's about it. That's the only team I could think of because mainly,
LSU maybe. You want to
yeah,
put
LSU
LSU in there?
LSU is a little bit in there as well. But
Sure.
other than that, it's just been. I saw Lenardi's bracketology that came out this morning on ESPN. 13 SEC schools actually in the bracketology, which sounds funny to say because we're usually talking about ACC schools like Duke, North Carolina, and some other relevant ACC schools like maybe Clemson, Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
in there usually. And the ACC usually has the most, but this year the SEC has been the most dominant conference in college basketball, which is going to go down as one of the most historical seasons um, ever, I think. And I think your national champion could be an SEC team. I honestly think it could be.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have the best odds for sure that an SEC team wins it because Auburn and Alabama and Florida and Tennessee, they're all going to have good odds for sure. And then it's probably if it's not an SEC team, it's probably Duke. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun to see.
But certainly, I mean, college basketball this year, just the SEC conference in general and Auburn in general has just been amazing to watch. And
Sure.
you don't want it to end, but we're getting there. We're getting close to March, and the big dance is coming up soon. So definitely going to be keeping our eyes out for the seeding, what Auburn gets, and which we obviously know it's probably going to be number 1 seed, but
Sure.
definitely going to be interesting. What's going to happen tomorrow in Neville, and then remainder of the season for the Auburn Tigers, but going away from basketball, I know, Zach,
Yes.
that you love Auburn football. I do too. I
Sure.
go to every game. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just this past season was not the season we expected. We thought Peyton was going to develop. We obviously thought Jarquez would get the ball a lot more. We thought Hugh Freeze had changed up. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on what you have, or what your thoughts are on Auburn football this upcoming season with guys like Jackson Arnold coming in from Oklahoma. You get a
Hmm.
5-star induced Knight, and you also get Eric Singleton Jr. from Georgia Tech to transfer as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can blame it on the roster anymore. Hugh Freeze
Yeah,
has done such a good job of building this roster and building this coaching staff with guys who want to put an emphasis on attracting and acquiring talent. They've done that. They've checked the box. I think there's a few positions that they need to tackle in the spring transfer portal window, but I think it's gonna be more so for depth, not for starters. Depending on who all enters the portal in this, interior defensive line, linebacker, kind of the two that I'm looking at the most. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, Jackson Arnold, you get it. Like, you certainly understand why Hugh Freeze wanted him. RPO background, athletic, talents through the roof. He just didn't do it. He just didn't do it at Oklahoma.
yeah.
And I don't know who could have done it at Oklahoma with, such a
Yeah,
poor
no
offensive
receivers at
line.
all. Yeah, no
No
receivers.
receivers. Yeah, I think they were handing out scholarships to
Yeah.
the water boys. Anybody who could run around. It's like, you play high school receiver? Yeah, let's see. Let's see. Uh, you got to think that Jackson Arnold is excited about this fresh start for him.
Yeah.
Obviously, the receiving core is going to be, on paper, it's one of, if not the best that Auburn has ever had. Now they've got to go out and produce, but having a Cam Coleman and an Eric Singleton and a Malcolm Simmons and a Horatio Fields and a Perry Thompson. I mean, it's a good group. It's a good group for sure. And that's going to be a super competitive battle this spring. And I think the running backs aren't as good as they were a year ago, but I also don't think it matters. Like you said, Jarquez Hunter, special back, but they didn't make him the focal point of the offense as much as we would have liked him
Yeah.
to be. And so for folks saying like, well, did you get a running back that you feel confident with Damari or Jeremiah or going to UConn to get Darrell Robinson? Like, I just don't think it matters. I don't think it
Mm-mm.
matters at this point. So you got to score more points. Everything they did on the defensive side of the ball, I'm okay with. I know people gripe about the third down situations, but it's like, yeah, they did
That
enough.
happens, yeah. Stuff
They gave
happens.
you they gave you opportunities to win in some of these games, and the offense continued to put them in bad situations, especially early in the season. So you've got to find ways to score points. Yards are
Mhm.
fun. Dominating in between the 20s is fun, but you can't miss kicks anymore. You can't have bad field position anymore, and you've got to score points. And so all the pressure's on Hugh Freeze to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've noticed that the buzz has been around Auburn football lately is Deuce Knight and Jackson Arnold both taking basically the same amount of reps in spring practice before the 8A game. I heard that's what's going to happen. And also, like you mentioned, the running back room not going to be the focal point this year of the offense. It's going to be Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman. They're going to have to figure out ways to catch the ball. And, the turnovers. Turnovers is one thing as Auburn fans, we really, really hate. And last year was absolutely horrendous with the turnovers. I mean, that
Well,
was,
especially the first half. I
oh,
mean,
yeah.
Peyton got better at taking care of the football over the course of the season. Um, and that's something that Jackson, I mean, it was a similar story with Jackson Arnold. Struggled the first half of the season, got benched, and then when he came back, he took a lot better care of the football. I mean, it was similar to what happened with Peyton a year ago. And so, all of these games that we point to and say, they shouldn't have lost, um, to me, it goes back to, yeah, the turnovers. Like if the offense or Peyton would have played like they did in the second half, they wouldn't have turned the ball over a million times against Cal. You probably beat them. You probably
Hmm.
beat Arkansas, but that's not what happened. That's not what happened. And so they've got to figure out how to hit the ground running. You can't have 5 or 6 weeks until you figure out how to run your offense, especially when you're opening the season on the road
At
against a
Baylor.
Baylor team that I think is pretty tricky. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty tricky. So that is a monumental game. If Auburn goes out and loses that one, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, like speaking of games, like kind of going over Auburn's schedule here, you got Baylor, you got
Hmm.
South Alabama and Ball State, and then after that you get into conference play with I believe Texas A&M is your first game, and that's on the road. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on Auburn's schedule next year and what game will be the key game that could possibly make Auburn the team to possibly make maybe a push for the college football playoff or maybe even a decent bowl team.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned at A&M,
Hmm.
and they play at Oklahoma the week prior to that. But
Okay.
I think if you can get one of those, especially if you're able to beat Baylor, if you can get one of those and just split those heading into the home matchup against Georgia, where you'll have a bye week in between there, I think that would go a long way. And then I think just if you can take care of business at home and find a way to beat Georgia or Bama, obviously that'd be huge. But beat Missouri, beat Kentucky, and just beat all the teams at home that you're supposed to win. I think that would be a nice step
Yeah.
in the right direction. Um, and I think a lot of these road games are winnable. I don't think you win at Oklahoma and at A&M, but if you can steal one of those, I think you got to like it. I definitely think at Oklahoma is more gettable than at Texas A&M, especially with the Jackson Arnold tie. I think that's going to be a really fun game going into it. But I mean, it seems like Auburn has played better against Arkansas in Fayetteville than they have against Arkansas at Jordan Hare Stadium over the last few years. It just feels
Yeah.
that way. And then they certainly played better at Vandy than Vandy at home, this past year.
Yeah,
So
I don't think Vandy will be a problem this year. Even though Pavia is coming back, I still don't see it being a problem with Auburn's team that they have.
they've painted such a target on them now too, for them to be Vandy, and now they're coming out, the
Hmm.
acting like they've got the swag and the moxie, and like I don't know. I think people are going to treat them differently. They could sneak up on people a year ago. I don't think they'll be able to do that now. So,
I think they'll be ready this time, like most of the SEC opponents will be.
but I think the stretch and like how this season will be remembered is the 4 game stretch where Auburn plays Missouri at Arkansas versus Kentucky and at Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
And I think Auburn can go 4-0 in those games. And
I
then
think they
all
could too.
and then if you take care of business in your non-conference, then all of a sudden you're looking at 8 wins. To me, it's the meat of that schedule. So October 18th through November 8th, you've got to go 4-0 in that stretch if you want to achieve all the goals that you have in front of you.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. As Auburn fans, we need a season like an 8-4 season, and that would get Hugh Freeze back on track. And I certainly think this team could possibly, stretch those wins even more and get maybe even 9 wins if they need to, and possibly upset somebody. But
Well, yeah, I mean,
definitely,
let's talk about what that looks like. So if they go 4-0 in the non-conference, which essentially means you beat Baylor
yeah,
at Baylor, Ball State, South Alabama, Mercer, I don't think we're worried about. But if you could go 4-0 in that stretch, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky at Vandy, that's 8-4. And then we talked about stealing one against, either at Oklahoma or at Texas A&M. Like that's to me, that's the ticket. That's the
oh yeah,
ticket.
yeah, certainly. I mean, and that's the thing. If we were to, obviously, if you were to beat Bama at home, they would that would be insane. We haven't beat Bama in 6 years, and also, Georgia. I don't know what Georgia has next year. I don't know the quarterback situation with Georgia. I don't really know what their receiving room looks like. Their defense
Yeah.
obviously going to be good. And also same with Missouri. I don't know what Missouri has because Brady Cook was the key piece to their offense, and so is Luther Burton, and they're both going to the NFL now. So really going to be a deciding factor for those teams.
Yeah, I agree.
What's their quarterback rooms look like?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not fired up about Missouri offensively.
Mm-mm.
They spent a lot of money for Bo Prabula, and I, I don't get it. I
I
don't
haven't seen
fully
him
get
play
it.
yet. I no, I haven't seen him play yet. So I mean,
He
if they
hasn't
spend,
really played yet. So
yeah, I mean
you
he's
look at him. I like Taylor Green in Arkansas a ton. He's just in a bad situation. I'm a little surprised nobody tried to pry him out of there. I also really like Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. I like him a lot. I know he lost to Auburn last year, but like he was, I think he's really good. He's not a natural thrower, I don't think, unless he proves me wrong this year. But I like him as a quarterback.
yeah,
Um, Oklahoma's interesting with the John Mateer. Like everybody loved him in the portal, saying he's the number one portal quarterback, number one portal player. Like I don't see it.
yeah.
I've been wrong about QBs before. Don't get me wrong, but that's one where in that system, and I know they got a new OC, I guess his former coach or whatever. But I just that's one where I think Oklahoma's about to get propped up again. A year ago, they were all gassing up Jackson Arnold, and now they're all down on Jackson Arnold, and they're about to gas up Mateer. That's one that I don't fully get.
Yeah, I mean, Mateer, you got to look at it. He didn't play really in a conference. I mean, Pac-12 is Pac-2 now, and they played a bunch of teams from the Mountain
Right.
West who aren't very good. Like they played San Jose State, and
Yeah, this isn't Miami getting Cam Ward a year ago.
yeah,
Like
I
it's
mean, this
not
is
it's
like
not the same thing.
you got to basically a whole new team because Oklahoma had, I believe, the second most transfers in the SEC besides Arkansas. So if you look at that, I mean, obviously Oklahoma's basically rebuilding their whole team. That's basically what they're doing there. They're rebuilding their whole team. He's gonna have to go through a new offensive system. I mean, he has his offensive coordinator there, but still gonna have to go through a whole new offensive system, which is gonna change a lot for Mateer. And that's where I think Auburn could take advantage of Oklahoma in Norman, in a pretty big stadium. I mean, 95,000 is what Norman holds. So I think if Auburn can do that early on in the season, that's really one of those key games. And I also think the Baylor game, like you said, is a key game. I don't know. I believe it's going to be oh, who's their starting quarterback? It's not going to be Walker. Walker's not going to start because he's
Yeah.
obviously young.
I
But
forgot his name too, but yeah, he's going to be the returning starter there. But
yeah,
the Baylor game is only, I think it's only big if Auburn loses it,
yeah. Because if
and it's
Auburn wins it,
really big if Auburn loses it.
oh yeah, no. If Auburn wins it, obviously, I think you'll see. The thing is, I don't want to see the fan base. This is what we, as Auburn fans, this is what we all deal with. Is the fan base kind of jumps to conclusions early on in the season? Like obviously last year, you probably know during the Alabama A&M game, everybody thought we were going to win the national championship after we scored 73 points. They were like,
Oh yeah, that was
oh
awesome.
yeah, we're going to win the national championship. We're going to go very far, make the 12-team playoff, blah blah blah. But that's the same thing that's going to happen when we play Baylor, and it's just a repeating cycle at this point. And if we were to beat
We will
Baylor,
get more info though
yeah,
against Baylor than what we did in the opener last year. So I do think if you go out and have a good looking offense against Baylor, I do think that means significantly more than it did in last year's opener.
yeah. And the one thing is you can't drop these other non-conference games to Mercer, South Alabama, or Ball State. You can't lose one of those. You got to win.
Sure.
You got to go 4-0 in conference play. 3-1 if possible if you lose to Baylor. But if Auburn wants to have a successful season, the offense is going to have to get going. Can't turn the ball over. And like you said, defense, not really worried about the defense. A lot of key pieces returning. We got a lot of guys. And we also got some transfer portal guys as well. So I feel pretty confident with the defense. And
Sure.
yeah, I mean, just going to be very interesting to see what Auburn has in store in 2025. Obviously, first game of the season, August 30th, in Waco, Texas, I believe. Yeah, in
Mhm.
Baylor. So that's going to be a fun environment out there. If any Auburn fans travel down there to Waco to see the Tigers play, but yeah, really excited to see what Hugh Freeze has in store with this upcoming 2025 football team.
Yep. Year 3. It's a big one.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. So definitely interesting. But going away from Auburn football, obviously, you said you weren't a big baseball guy. You go to some games, but kind of want to talk about Auburn baseball. Auburn baseball this season lost to Holy Cross one game on Saturday. Um, and it's, I mean, this team, we don't really know what they have in store. But Zach, obviously, you went to a game, and what did you see from Auburn baseball that kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like they score in spurts, which I don't think is unusual in the college game. But so much of what Butch Thompson does early on is, he mixes and matches, he changes up the rotation, he moves guys around. He did a conversation with Lindsey Crosby and Brad Law a few days ago that dropped on the Barn Baseball show that they do, talking about how he's got 4 catchers and he's going to figure out ways to get all 4 catchers into the game. And they did that on Saturday. It was a pinch hit situation. They were moving guys around. And so they're still figuring out how to use this roster, but I think it's what you want. It's a nice combination of transfer guys as well as veterans as well as really talented youngsters, really talented freshmen. So
Yeah.
it's going to take time, but I really liked what I saw from the freshmen on Sunday's game, especially from the mound. And so we'll see. Troy's a little salty that Auburn was ranked ahead of them.
Yeah, in
Um,
the AP
uh,
in the AP poll, I saw that.
yeah, AP poll, and then I think perfect game as well. And so they play tonight, and so I think Troy's going to really want that one, and we'll see exactly how Auburn responds with that. Carson Myers looks like he is slated to start tonight, and then who is it tomorrow? North Alabama. So excited to see kind of some midweek action that I think does have a little bit of relevancy.
Yeah, and then you got Wright State this weekend, and the Tigers go the end of February. Actually, the Tigers go to Arlington to play a little tournament out there with Ohio State, Oregon State, and Baylor. So that should be fun. But yeah, I mean this Auburn Tigers baseball team. I did see your Instagram post as well that you got early access actually to the baseball stadium, and kind of just tell the fans what that's like and what the new upgrades are like at Plainsman.
Yeah, I mean they've totally redone, I guess, 2 main areas. They've redone a little bit of everything, but the most noticeable things, I guess, for the average fan would be everything that they now have access to on the first base side there. They've just totally added, different types of concessions and general admission. I mean, general admission ticket is the value now,
Yeah,
or so many different places to kind of stand and watch the game and things that you have access to. And they've revamped the concessions and the team shops and offer a little bit more of everything. And then on the third base side of the Tiger Terrace, they moved a lot of the concessions that were there outside the park. That's between the Tiger Terrace and the parking deck. And so you've got more general admission seating there as well. That's where we kind of posted up on Sunday because my kids wanted to run
yeah,
around and jump off the steps and all that. And then of course you can go up on the War Eagle wall
yeah.
and watch a game from up there too, which is super super cool. So it's a great place to watch a baseball game. It already was that, and they found a way to make it not only a little bit better but significantly better. They did an outstanding job.
Oh yeah, no, I love the new upgrades, and I'm gonna try to go to a game. I might go to that Old Dominion series during spring break, during that midweek series that we have. But it should be fun. I mean, Auburn baseball. If you guys haven't watched Auburn baseball, you guys need to go to Plainsman Park. The new upgrades are amazing. I mean, just they added what I believe 2,000 more seats is what it is, or maybe 1,000, somewhere
Yeah,
around that
yeah. I mean,
range.
it's up to like 6,500 now
Yeah.
is where it was. I don't know where it was before that, but that's where it is now. And they set an attendance record both for a weekend series as well as an individual game this past weekend. And it was against,
Holy Cross. I mean, yeah, a
Yeah.
team that's not
Wait till
really.
SEC play. It's going to be
Yeah,
really fun.
Vanderbilt actually comes to town after spring break, I believe, start of April. So that should be fun for SEC play. But obviously, we've talked about all we've needed to talk about today, Zach, and appreciate you for coming on the show. Glad you took your time out of your day. But that is gonna do it for episode 10 of the Halftime Sports Talk Show. I'm glad, like I said, you came on today. Just kind of letting everybody know your channel, and hopefully, I'll put that down there in the description. I'll put your channel down there so people can go check it out. Great show you have over there in Locked On Auburn. And just amazing work you do with Auburn sports. But don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't to Halftime Sports. And also, for more content like this, we got videos on Instagram, Twitter, and where else we got? Oh, yep, we got it on Snapchat as well. Snapchat, so yeah, don't forget to check that out. But